Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Trey Stire. Welcome to part 7 of the Unsung Heroes of the 2026 Super Motocross World Championship season. Of course, we are going to be talking about the first 250 East round of the season, the 7th in the 450 class. Arlington, Texas, AT&T Stadium was the host of the most recent event, and there were plenty of headlines. It was the military appreciation round, plenty of amazing graphic kits and gear sets, a bunch of great looks all across the paddock. We're here to wrap up the first 250 East round of the year and to shout out all of those privateers who qualified for main events. I am Trey Stire, your host. Thank you so much for listening. You can find this show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, iHeartRadio, wherever you find the Stire Sound, my traditional podcast. And I encourage you to also find the written version on treystire.wordpress.com because I will be posting a lot of images of the graphic kits ran this weekend and showing some love to the military members who were honored on Saturday night. Let's go ahead and jump right into this thing. As always, we start with the 250 division, 250 East series. So a new group of faces and names to talk about. However, it was the same old story in terms of organization. That's right. Club MX Yamaha, the top two privateers, go figure, they were paying homage to the 82nd Airborne Division of the United States Army with their beautiful grayed out look. And it was Cody Schock, not really a surprise there as the top privateer at Arlington. Of course, he scored his first career podium there. He's been pretty solid in season openers in the past. Cody, 7th overall on the night in the main event, and he was one of those guys who had to charge up from that early pileup on the start that involved so many star Yamaha guys. Cody Schock really earned that 7th place. I'm sure he's wanting more, but it's a good start to the season considering he was down in that mess. Of course, Cole Davies, Nate Thrasher, Caden Dudney, so many others affected. We'll talk about a couple other riders who were involved in the melee. Then right behind him, a great start to the season for his teammate Devin Simonson. Of course, both riders competed in World Supercross, but Schock was on his usual 250. Simonson was up on the 450. He had some good runs. Got some time to adapt back to the Club MX bike, and of course, last year, Simonson missed a little bit of time with a wrist injury at the start of the 250 East season. Now he comes in fully healthy and immediately matches his career best 250 Supercross finish. Great run for Simonson, ran in the top 5 early, lost a couple spots to some of those guys charging up through the pack, but an 8th place finish I think is a really good start to the year for Simonson, and he probably wants out of that range of numbers he's in. He was 91 a couple years ago, 88 last year, 89 this year. Dude's probably like, man, I just want to earn a 60 or a 70, somewhere around there to get out of this range. But a great start to the year for Devin Simonson. 9th place on the evening, Phoenix Racing Honda's team leader, Cullen Park, back again. His 5th professional season and, of course, 5th season with the Phoenix Racing Honda team. I talked to Cullen Park a little bit on press day. He said it's been great to be able to work with the team and to come back because you get to continually build that base up with the Phoenix Honda organization, and they have treated him pretty well over the years. Cullen was running in 7th place, but unfortunately a small little crash in the whoops. Definitely one of the most tame crashes of the weekend in that section. But Park lost a couple spots. Still a 9th place, a top 10 to begin the year. Not too shabby for the Floridian. And now he's heading to his home race. He says he loves to go to all of the rounds, but of course Daytona, he's revved up for that since it's his home race. He considers Tampa more of his home race, but Tampa not on the schedule this year, usually a semi-annual race, but he's ready to get back to his home state and in front of the fans at the World Center of Racing. Speaking of Phoenix Racing Honda, 10th place finisher is not competing for them anymore, but it was one of their longtime foundation builders over at that organization. Welcome back to Supercross, 5-time AMA Arena Cross champion Kyle Peters. KP is back, and apart from a one-off at the 2024 Philadelphia Supercross, this was Kyle's first full-time AMA Supercross race since 2022. It's been a while. Q stained. Kyle Peters, of course, suffered a pretty bad injury in 2022. Wasn't really sure if he was going to be able to race again, but he came back and he still won a couple more Arena Cross titles. Of course, 5 total to his name, all with the Phoenix Racing Honda team. This year, KP was looking for a ride. He raced for Bud Racing in the World Supercross Championship 250 division, but didn't end up landing a spot on one of the teams for Monster Energy Supercross. And I think that was some good motivation for him because he went out and he put together a top 10, his first real full-time AMA Supercross event since 2022, like I mentioned. He's competing aboard a Yamaha number 148, backed by Pristine Auction. He had some help suspension-wise from Ziggy and the boys over at Factory Connection, and he was pitting out of a van right behind the Club MX rig. I think if people need a fill-in, they are going to be calling KP because he had a great day. Top 10 throughout pretty much, wearing some Renan gear, the number 148 machine, a great return to action for Kyle Peters, and a top 10. He said he was a little bit rusty, but if you're getting 10th place feeling a little rusty, I think that's a great start to the year. Welcome back, Kyle Peters. Great to see him back in Monster Energy AMA's Supercross. Finishing 12th in the 250 East Division, a guy who is used to the 250 West Series but now moving more toward the East Coast. He's with the MX6 Racing Kawasaki team, repping number 77 this year. Please welcome back to the Unsung Heroes, first time on the audio edition, but someone who's appeared on this several times in the past, Derek Kelley. What's up, man? Great to see you back at the track, and a nice top 15 to build a foundation to start the year.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Stoked to be back at the races. Like I had a rough couple of years, the last few years with Supercross and injuries, but it's nice to be back inside the top 15 for some Supercross racing.
We'll go ahead and get right into your weekend. Of course, a big weekend for your team, MX6 Racing. Last year, they started out going to the races, truck and trailer. They had a couple guys on there, but they really started to hammer things out during the Nationals. You raced for them for a few rounds before an injury. Of course, they went to the playoffs with Henry Miller and Marshall Welton. Now they are back, and they competed in their first Pro Supercross race. Of course, they helped Gavin Betts in some SMX Next last year. But a top 15, you were the leading member of the team. Take me through your weekend. Take the listeners through your weekend. You had some speed in there, some top 10 and top 15 speed at times. Also a couple wild rides during the main event, but you kept it on two most of the time. 12th place finish, I think, is a solid result to begin your season.
Yeah, definitely good weekend for the team. All three of us made it straight into the main event. And I mean, unfortunate for Marshall. He got caught up in that first turn crash in the main and kind of ripped off a radiator hose or something like that. So he was unable to finish. And then Henry had I think a top 15 as well. So solid weekend for the team. And for me, I'm just glad to be back at the races. Broke my leg at Red Bud last year in July. So it's been quite a bit of time out of the, I guess, AMA pro racing scene. So just stoked to kind of make it through the weekend and at least prove to myself and maybe some other people that I still have top 10 speed in the 250 class, at least on Supercross. So yeah, I mean, I didn't really know what to expect coming in. Had a really long off season. Like I'm used to racing West where you have like a month if you're lucky, especially if you're on a Private 2 team. So it's pretty cool to have that extra time. But with that, it comes like a lot of question marks, like, am I ready? Am I doing the right things? And just stoked to see that the hard work is kind of going to pay off moving forward.
I have to ask about a certain part of the main event, and I'm sure you're probably going to laugh, but at one part, I'm looking up, of course, watching, trying to follow the lead battle. Shimoda, Pierce Brown, great racing up front. And I look up and I see, instead of being in the rhythm lane that you should have been in, you are backwards on the finish line jump. Take me through that a little bit because I looked up and I'm like, how in the world did DK end up there?
Yeah, no, that was I kind of got away with one there. Basically that little on off thing, they had the shelf system or whatever they want to call it, but I spun off the top of it getting off, and as I did that, I think I clicked the shifter down instead of, and I was trying to go from second to third, and I think I clicked it in a false neutral almost. And when I landed on the start straight, it threw me over the bars almost. And with that, it clicked into gear, and then I'm over the front, and then I was obviously panic revved, and then it kind of took off on me. And by that time, I was in the face of that 5-footer they had going across the start straight, and I kind of got launched. Literally, I landed on the backside of the finish line. So got away with it. I thought I was going down hard. I'm glad I didn't take anybody down with me. But it was actually kind of like, considering how bad it could have went, it went really well. Like I landed, stuck the landing, basically did like a 180, rocked a fakie, and then turned around and did a got right back on course within probably 5 or 6 seconds. So obviously I lost some position. I think I was in fifth or sixth at that point, which was a huge bummer for me because I felt like I was riding good. Had literally just kind of got past that first few laps. Everybody's kind of dicing, and then you kind of settle in. And I just took a deep breath. I'm like, all right, let's settle in. I was right behind Devin Simonson, and I was about to go to work on him. And literally that happened out of nowhere. It was kind of like a shock to the system almost. And then get back on course, and then you're right back in the battle again because I got back on in like 13th or 14th. And then like the whole light situation, the lights were still on the finish by the time I got to it. So I ended up checking up and rolling the finish, and then got passed back a couple times. So it was just a whole bunch of chaos right within a short amount of time, kind of after I'd already taken that deep breath almost. And it set me on the back foot almost for the rest of the main.
I feel like a lot of fans in our sport are going to probably get tired of hearing about red lights by the end of this week. That's going to be the hot button issue, but that banana jump or whatever they're calling those things, like you mentioned, I mean, that was claiming people throughout the night, not as bad as the whoops were claiming people, but I mean, Malcolm Stewart, former 250 champion, former 450 class race winner, and he went down hard, went over the bars off the exit of it. Like you said, you kind of got kicked going off of the jump, and that's what he did at one point. I didn't see the full crash, but I looked up and I watched Mookie's bike cartwheeling, and he went down pretty hard. But going back, as you mentioned, during the summer, unfortunately, you suffered that injury. You were starting to build that base with the MX6 team. Of course, they went for their first full season during the summer. You guys were on Yamahas last year, now on Kawasaki's. But you were starting to find your groove. You had a really good weekend at Thunder Valley, I know, around the top 15 there. Decent rides at High Point as well. So you were really starting to find your place and your rhythm, I feel like, before you got injured. But talk about the road to recovery, because obviously there are so many days where you were kind of in the darkness, struggling with those injuries, but you're rehabbing, you're working to get your way back. I talked to Pierce Brown a lot about that before his race weekend, and of course he's back and he got his first career win. But talk about some of that grinding and the recovery, and like you mentioned, going east this year, that might have helped you get back to ready to roll instead of rushing into the West Coast.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I don't know, man. It's been almost a year-long recovery or injury kind of, like, I can take you all the way back. It pretty much started the week before A1 is kind of when the wheels came off of the Derek Kelley train. I had a practice crash like the week of Christmas and broke a rib before A1. Took that week off, and then I was riding. I had to test my race bike for coming into the 2025 season on solitaire, and I cased a jump and then landed on the handlebar and broke my sternum. So I went to the hospital for that, and it basically, that was the week before A1, and kind of started off on the back foot as early as December of last year. So that kind of put me in a weird spot. And then me being the tough guy, I don't want to sit out unless I'm completely busted in half. I tried to race A1, ended up being really weak in the upper body, and kind of had a weird crash where I jumped into the other rhythm again, and ended up injuring my ankle, which that was the ankle that I broke at Redbud. So that thing kind of, dealing with the sternum, dealing with the rib, dealing with the ankle, all of that kind of compounded throughout the Supercross season with mediocre results and some bike setup issues and a whole lot of factors that kind of led into bad results. And then I came into outdoors, ended up thankfully having MX6 pick me up, and they kind of saved my outdoor season. I didn't really have anything going into there because solitaire is obviously a Supercross only gig. And yeah, like you said, I was kind of starting to kind of get into a groove. I figured out the bike. The team was working on new engine packages, and the suspension setup was getting dialed in. And then turned my leg around backwards at Redbud. It honestly wasn't too bad of an injury. It was just the fibula, little break. I went in, got it fixed, got a rod put in it, and I was basically walking within 10 days of the injury. I had the option to come back and race SMX, which I was walking, I was on the bike already, just kind of doing regular motos and whatnot. And honestly, for the first time in my career, it was a point where I was like, you know what, I'm able to ride the bike, but I don't think I'm ready to race. And I took that time and I was just like, you know what, I'm not going to race SMX, even though there's 7 spots that are going to take at the LCQ, which was kind of a hard pill to swallow for me. Whereas like, hey, you could go in there and get some points and make 25 grand for 22nd in the SMX series for the 450 class. And kind of bit the bullet on that one, did the extra time to recover, kind of reinvented my riding style to a certain extent, really worked on technique, recovered fully, did some off-season races, made a little bit of money doing that with the team. Went overseas, did kind of a beach race, and just kind of had no pressure on myself to really get back and perform. And it allowed me to kind of heal and work on technique. And then obviously we went east, and I was able to fully recover my ankle that had been bothering me since A1 basically. Um, and just doing that, I think it really set me up for a good first round, I think, because you can't really expect a whole lot when you're coming in injured. Like you, as a dirt bike rider and as a previous top 10 guy or top 5-ish kind of guy, you're always going to have the speed. And if you're injured, you can still go fast, but it's how long you're going to be able to stay on the bike and how many times you're going to hit the ground if you're weak, you know? So I think that's kind of the story that I've played for myself coming into this season.
You talk about working on technique, and of course, you've been at this pro level for a while. 2019, 2020, you have been racing for several years, as you mentioned, top tens, close to top fives before in Supercross. You've been in the mix, scoring points regularly. So for you, when you had to change that technique and really try to reinvent your riding style, how hard was it for you to go back and say, even though I want to change this, you have so many habits that you developed through the years riding, little things that you might not know about. How hard was it for you to try to say, you know what, I need to quit doing this and I need to start doing this a little bit better or do this a little bit differently to try to get up front a little more often?
Yeah, so as you know, like if you're healthy to a certain extent and you're able to race, there's so many races throughout the year that you never really have a chance to like sit down and be like, all right, I need to work on just technique. It doesn't matter how fast I'm going, and it's painful sometimes as a racer to be like, yo, I'm gonna go 5 seconds a lap slower than what I technically could go, but I need to really work on these few things, whether that be my feet, my hips, kind of keeping my knees behind my toes has been a big thing for me, and really leading with my head. And I think it just takes time. It takes months and weeks of just doing uh, not necessarily like you go to the track as like when you're in race mode and you're in off season mode, you're really mostly focusing on speed. Like as you're always like, all right, I gotta tuck my toes in, make sure I got my elbows up or whatever. But when it comes to like, all right, I'm gonna really try to dial in my technique, you have to slow it down so much that it becomes painful. Like normally you go to the track, you're like, all right, I'm gonna do a warm up and then I'm gonna do a 30 at 85, 90% speed, and then I'm gonna do 5 sets of 2 lap sprints, and then I'm gonna do a 10-minute qualifying session. Just that type of stuff doesn't really play into changing technique very well when you're riding at that upper limit of your threshold. So I just never had a chance to kind of take a few months and without like, all right, I got a race in 6 weeks. It's I don't have the race until halfway through February. We're in November. I've got all this time. I can take November, I can take half of December and really just dial in my technique. And it took a lot of pressure off of me in that sense, not having to race A1. And I think hopefully, obviously, you can see like that the speed is there, but if I can eliminate those 2 stupid mistakes I made in the main event, then the results will be there, but a lot more consistently, if that makes sense.
Definitely does. Speaking of the MX6 team now, of course, you were one of the early members, but that team has grown a lot over the past year from truck and trailer setup. They are all in now with the big semi hauler. Setup looks very nice, very clean. Ollie Stone coming over as team manager. Of course, he has plenty of experience working with Kawasaki's from all his time wrenching over at the Pro Circuit team. Brand new bike for you, though, and for a lot of the guys on your team. I know Marshall Welton rode Kawasaki's back in his EMX days, but he's largely been a Yamaha guy for most of your career. You've been a steel frame guy a lot of time on KTM and some years on Husqvarna as well. Henry Miller coming in has been a lot of Honda in his career, some KTM in there. Talk a little bit about the team dynamic working together with some of those guys, because all of you have been top 10 level supercross guys and shown speed both indoors and outdoors during your careers. You've been grinding out there, and to have this new team to really help them build the foundations for their success. What is it like with that setup over there with the MX6 guys, and how has the process been so far with that crew?
Well, I mean, it's been awesome. Like, there's obviously going to be growing pains when you go from a fifth wheel trailer, like a regular. I mean, it was a small rig. It had a little awning, but I mean, it was a it was a two rider gig, and they kind of grown. When I came into the team, there wasn't really anybody there that has had experience with larger teams like an Ollie Stone or like that. So everybody was kind of learning, and then Chris, the team owner, he brought on Ollie, and he obviously has a ton of experience with PC and gas and being a factory mechanic for many years. So it's just nice to have that kind of knowledge, and he understands what it takes to build a factory team, or like what it takes, not necessarily build a factory team maybe, but what a factory team does to have that sort of success. So it's been cool to see like Ollie kind of working with the team and everybody on the team kind of learning that process of, all right, we're not a small gig anymore. We're going to have a full semi. We're trying to make the bike better, and there's just so many moving parts that it takes a lot of time. And there's been a ton of questions, like with the team being based pretty much here in Corona, in SoCal. It's like, well, why are you guys racing east? Well, I think a big part of it is we didn't really have the time as a team to develop the bike, to develop the race shop that we have, to get the semi built. We just needed that extra time, and it's just been super cool to kind of see everything grow and the little bits and pieces and kind of the puzzle coming together.
Talking a little bit about the East Coast, as I mentioned, you're a West Coast guy. From there, you've raced the West Series for years. And apart from 2021, yes, it was technically the West Series, but you guys were on like Daytona and Atlanta, of course, the COVID year where we had all the residencies. But you're going to be going to a lot of stadiums, maybe for the first or second time, depending on if they hosted a shootout before. So talk about some of these venues. What tracks or stadiums are you most excited to go to? Because I'm sure it's got to be a little bit of a refresher for you to go to a little bit different cities instead of that usual Anaheim, San Diego, Glendale grind that you're locked into every year.
Yeah, on one hand, it's like it's exciting and it's something fresh. On the other, it's like at the end of the day, we're racing dirt bikes. And I don't know, like I think I'm nervous. I'm kind of, I don't know if nervous is the right word, but excited, kind of interested to see how I do on the softer dirt, because in the past I've not had my best races. Like some of the West Coast rounds, like a Seattle or the shootouts that we've had at Indy, I've kind of struggled a bit. But I think that comes down to like I'm excited because we have Cruz on, Dave Cruz, who comes from PC, and he sets up the PC bike, so he understands like what you need. And I don't think I've ever really had that kind of setup going into a ruddy track. And I've always like tested here. We've set up the bike for here, and honestly, I come and it's maybe a little too soft, and I kind of struggle with the ruts. It shoots me all over the place. So I'm kind of excited to see how our setup and having that knowledge behind us kind of pushes me for these East Coast rounds. I don't really care too much about like new stadiums or whatnot. Like at the end of the day, we're there for 3 days or 2 days, and we're out of there. So the cities and whatnot, we're never going to spend any time there to see it. But I'm really excited to do Daytona. The only other time I tried to race it was in 21, like you mentioned, when the West kind of flopped with the East. But I came into it really injured. I had a practice crash and I hurt my neck really bad, so I couldn't even really ride. Like going back to what I said, I took some time off. I probably should have taken time off in 2021 when I had that injury, but I just kind of rammed it. So I'm excited to kind of see how I ride Daytona. It's an iconic track, and I'm stoked to be healthy coming into Daytona. It's probably the one that I'm most excited about.
Obviously, top 10 level speed looked like it was on the cards for you. Great start in the main event. For you, what are you looking for? Of course, you mentioned Daytona, pretty brand new to you. But what are you looking for in these next couple rounds to get you that solid foundation and to keep progressing for the rest of the year as the E Series really starts to pick up steam?
For me, I think I just need to remember the stuff that I've worked on. I'm kind of disappointed in myself a little bit in the main event. Like, obviously, I had some good whoop speed, but I reverted back a little bit to some old technique where I'm a little guarded. I start squeezing too hard with my knees. I'm a little bit forward on the bike. And I kind of think that that led to some mistakes. And if I can remember what I've kind of built in this off season and I can ride smooth and everything like that, I think that's going to be the key for me moving forward. I was a little bit nervous. I knew that I had good speed out here on the West Coast, but you don't ever ride with those guys. We've been kind of riding by ourselves almost. So to see that I have good speed already, top 10 for sure speed, possibly if I could crack top 5 with a good moto or getting some clean laps in, I'm just excited to get the ball rolling and hopefully I can stay away from those mistakes that I had in the main event this weekend.
Before we conclude, feel free to plug your socials, plug some of those sponsors and companies, of course, MX6, your biggest supporter of your team, but plug some of those people who are helping you out and give people an idea where to follow you and see the rest of your season as it progresses.
Yeah, I mean, of course, you guys can follow me on Instagram. It's underscore Derek Kelley. That's probably the best way or best place to see the most updates. I'm probably going to start doing a little bit more race cap review stuff, maybe on TikTok. So you guys can check out my TikTok. I think it's underscore Derek Kelley as well. And then shout out to the team. You guys go follow their socials. We got Align Media doing our social media stuff, so there's going to be a lot of cool content coming through those with Sons of Our Fathers and MX6 Racing. So you guys can follow the team along, see what we got going on, and check it out. I also have an electrolyte company, so if you guys want to check that out, I built that over the last couple of years. If you guys want to pick some up, it's called nxthydration.com. I've got some cool stuff coming with that, maybe a little rebrand, some newer products, and if you guys follow me on Instagram, you can see what I got going on.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Derek, thank you for the time once again. 12th place run to start the year. Best of luck this weekend at Daytona and the rest of the season.
Right on. Thanks, Trey.
Thank you once again to Derek Kelley for the time joining us this week on the Unsung Heroes, talking about his weekend at the opening round for the 250 East Series in Arlington. And like he said, go follow his social medias, underscore Derek Kelley on Instagram. Go follow the MX6 Racing team, as well as his NXT Hydration brand to keep up with DK as he progresses throughout the year. Some great insight from the number 77. Moving on now, 14th place, getting back into the 250 East field. Jeremy Hand, another veteran we're used to seeing. He's been in the 450 class full time the last couple years, back in the 250 East division, and he gets a top 15 finish. Fourth consecutive year for Jeremy, running his own program. Valley Automotive Group as the title sponsor once again. O'Neill Gear, no changes for Jeremy there, other than going back to the 250. But it was a solid night. Unfortunately, he went down in his heat race, lost some ground, got out of the transfer positions, but he had a nice ride in the LCQ, stayed upright, stayed patient, got through into the main event. 14th place, top 15, pretty much his usual range. Good start to the year, 8 points on the board for the Ohio native right away. I know that's somebody looking forward to Cleveland a little bit later in the season. 15th place, right behind him, another veteran, Henry Miller, another one of the MX6 Racing Kawasaki members, as I mentioned in my chat with Derek Kelley, a guy who's used to Hondas in the last several years. Of course, he ran a Yamaha last summer and during the playoffs for the MX6 team. But Henry making his professional debut on a Kawasaki, 15th place, had a couple small tip overs, but all in all, 15th, something to build on, and I'm sure Henry Miller will get back into that top 10 pretty soon. Right behind him, it was another Kawasaki and another guy returning after a long absence to AMA Supercross. Welcome back, Luke Clout from Australia. This is his third stint here in America. Competed with Mad Racing Suzuki in 2016, Penrite Honda in 2020. Of course, that team now Quadlock Honda. Now Luke is back for the Partzilla Rocket Blaster Power PRMX Kawasaki team. He's essentially a fill in. It didn't say that on the press release, but Liam Aloff is currently out after an injury he suffered toward the end of the Partzilla Arena Cross Series. But Cloud is in, sporting the number 101 once again. And I talked with Luke on press day as well. You can find all my press day interviews on the Transworld Motocross YouTube page. Talking with Joe Shimoda, Cody Schock, Cullen Park, Drew Adams, Jason Anderson as well. Luke said that it was a little bit of a last-minute deal. He's been in touch with PRMX for a little bit, but was racing so many off-season races. And he's also been jumping back and forth between classes most of his time during the off-season. Australian Supercross, World Supercross. He raced the 450 for Empire Kawasaki and Bud Racing Kawasaki, respectively. But he ran the 250 during the Paris Supercross and nearly scored the overall victory in their 250 division. And Luke, I was talking to him about that switch. I asked him, other than the power, what is one of the biggest aspects? Luke said the engine braking is something that is very different between the bikes. And he said you have to be way more intense and on the gas on the 250. You can afford to be a little bit lazy, he said, on the 450 with so much power. Good insight for Luke. As I mentioned, check out those interviews if you want to hear more. 16th place, he was one of those guys that was wrapped up on the start crash of the main event. It was a weird weekend for Clout. There were some moments where he looked good in qualifying. He was in that top 10, top 5 range at some points. He was solid there, but on press day, he looked a little stiff, a little uncomfortable in some places, but he dialed it in a little more, and I would look for Clout as well to be in that top 10 fight a little closer as the season progresses if he continues to dial in that PRMX machine. Just behind Luke, 17th place. Finally, somebody put it in as the Rocky Mountain ATVMC Privateer Payout Award winner again. Luke Neese. He is competing for the Storm Lake Honda Buddy Brooks Racing team. Luke was the runner-up in the Partzilla Arena Cross Series I just mentioned a couple minutes ago. And he went in through the LCQ. Great ride. Won the event to claim the 19th gate on the main event line. 17th place. A solid start to the year for Luke Neese. He's been up and down the last couple years, had some main event starts and some decent runs last year, now putting it in the opener 2 years in a row. Good sign from the number 95. Of course, he's back in the national number range. 18th place, another Honda rider. We had a couple Kawasaki's, now a couple Hondas back-to-back. John Short back in the 250 East class for the first time since 2022. He's been a 450 guy for the last few years, but now he is back aboard his Dallas Honda machine. Number 90 this year is John, and he had some new sponsorship. I'm not sure how to say this, so apologies if I screw up the name, but Ventiker Realty was coming on board. He had a bright green set of gear. You couldn't miss him. Skills Racing dialing him in. He was the beneficiary of a Hardy Munoz crash in the second heat race to claim the final transfer spot. John Short, 18th, back in the main event picture for the first time since 2024 at either class. Birmingham, I believe, his last main event total. 19th place at the end of the evening. Another guy back in the main event. 2025 was a real struggle for him after competing for the EBR Performance All Balls Yamaha team. No main event starts after 4 starts in 2024, but he was back after taking the last transfer spot in the LCQ. Great to see Brighton Carroll, the second-generation racer, number 483, aboard his own effort on a Yamaha. Brighton was back in the main event, 19th place, a few points to start building. A welcome sign, huge step in the right direction after a really tough 2025. Great to see Brighton back up in the main event mix. 20th place on the evening, it was Bryce Shelley on the Gizmo Racing Yamaha. Bryce, number 80 this year, another national number to get used to. But Bryce, man, he was a start-straight magnet for crashes all night long, unfortunately. He was in that 250 Heat 2 crash that brought out the red flag, colliding with Hayes Edwards and Luca Marsalisi. Got back up, wasn't able to transfer in his heat race, but he rode it through the LCQ. Nice, solid job there. And then in the main event, he was collected once again in that crash that had so many guys like Davies, like Thrasher, Clout. He was wrapped up in the melee, got behind pretty early, 20th place. He rode it in. The last finisher on track, of course, a couple people behind him who DNF'd. But Shelley, All things considered, with all of the carnage he dealt with throughout the night, 20th place is not too bad at the end of the day. And it took him a little bit to make his first main event last season, so putting it in round one is a huge step in the right direction for Shelley. 22nd, our final privateer in the main event, MX6 Racing's Marshall Welton. Man, he went on a wild ride during the heat race. In that double tabletop section where you would usually go on, off. After the off, getting ready to hit that triple, Marsh got kicked sideways a little bit, and if he flew about 5 more feet, he would have crashed right into the big giant pylon that stands up there that you see the top 5 names on the leaderboard in the middle of the track. It was a close call. He went to the middle of the track, cut it a little bit. No harm, no foul, got back on track, and didn't lose a ton of time, all things considered. Took his final heat race transfer spot in Heat 1, but unfortunately, he was one of many in the main event that got caught up in that start crash, and he was sent to the pits immediately. As Derek said, apparently a radiator issue there. For Marshall, I'm sure he'll be able to rebound in the next couple weeks. That is your main event competitors from the 250 East Division. Now to some news and notes from outside the main event. First guy on the outside looking in was a Texan, Ryder Floyd, Tylube Honda Racing supporting him, the number 296 machine, just shy of making it. Phoenix Racing Honda, a bit of a disappointing night. Yes, Cullen Park was in the top 10, but a rough night, especially in the whoop section, for both Evan Ferry and Gavin Towers. Evan Ferry's back, little red dog, second generation racer. He was starting to charge in his heat race right outside the transfer spots. He was catching Landon Hartz and Kyle Peters, who were battling for the last spot, side by side. Ferry had almost too good of a run through the whoops because he crashed into the back wheel of Peters. Couldn't get slowed down in time, and he crashed hard into a berm. Looked to be a pretty rough crash, but got back up, rode the LCQ. A bad start there really cost him a chance to be in the main event. And for Gavin Towers, bummer start to his sophomore season. GT was 10 out of 10 last year in the main event qualification standards. One of a few privateers who made every single main event a year ago. But unfortunately, a bad heat race, and then he gets out front, pulls the whole shot in the LCQ, and then crashes in the whoops immediately. Gavin Towers, D and Q for the first time in his Supercross career. EBR Performance is back with a race team partnering with Family Power Sports this year. They have 3 riders again this year. A different look, though. You have Hardy Munoz, the veteran of the team, who's always fast, but sometimes he crashes, and that's what happened in Arlington. Crashed twice in his heat race. Ultimately did not start the LCQ. And then a pair of rookies on the team. You have Hayes Edwards, who turned pro during the summer last year. Thunder Valley, I believe, was his first pro race in June. Hayes ended up scoring his first point of his career at Budds Creek to end the motocross season. Now he is in for his full Supercross debut season after running some SMX Next a year ago. And speaking of a former SMX Next podium finisher, Landon Hartz, also with the team, the Alabama native, made his pro debut. He was close to transferring in that heat race, but he went down as well. Building night for that team, and I expect to see Munoz and Hartz for sure in some main events this year. I think Landon Hartz is very underrated and will be one to watch. And then, unfortunately, Luca Marsalisi, one of the few Triumph privateers out there getting some backing from Triumph of Harrisonburg and HP Tuners. Luca got the worst of that heat race start crash. Went down, favoring his shoulder. Not sure what the diagnosis is recording this on Tuesday afternoon, but hopefully Luca will be better and back on the track soon. Now moving to the 450 class. Once again, I sound like a broken record. Joey Savacci, 7th place finish. It was a wild ride for Joey. He took a tumble and flipped over during the whoops. But other than that, you get up from that crash and you're in 7th place. I think that's pretty solid. It was another good day overall. 2nd place in his heat race. Eli Tomac passed him, but Joey said, nah, my spot. Joey went back around beast mode and took the spot from him. It was top 4 gate pick. 7th place. Another good finish for Joey despite his wild ride. And then, speaking of the Quadlock Honda team, finally Christian Craig gets his first top 10. And if you want stats, this is a stat that surprised me. I know he didn't get a top 10 finish last year with Star Yamaha, but this was Christian's first top 10 finish in a Supercross race since the end of March 2023, Seattle. Also a ninth place run, of course. That was when Christian competed for the Rockstar Energy Husqvarna Factory Racing Team. But finally, back in the top 10 for Christian Craig, Quadlacana. They had some great blackout looks, and everybody had some different. Looked like Joey had some camo, standard looking Army camo on his bike. Craig had a little bit more blue, a little more Air Force vibes there. And Shane McElrath, who was in 13th place, we'll get to him in a minute, he had some red on his machine. But a double top 10 for Quadlock Honda, gaining momentum. The next few guys in the order, guys who are still 7 for 7 to start the year. Justin Hill, 12th place, aboard his Team Tedder KTM. Not quite the level of speed he had at last year's Arlington Supercross, but another top 15 finish, continuing to build points, which are important, especially looking into the future for the SMX playoffs. Shane McElrath, as I mentioned, 13th place, and guess what? He's continuing that upward trajectory. 15th at Glendale, 14th at Seattle, 13th at Arlington. Can he get a 12th and match his number plates this weekend at Daytona? Time will tell, but Shane inching closer to that top 10. 15th place, Vince Freezy, his best run of the year on the ISRT Kawasaki, still without their hauler, still getting repaired, so they were pitting out of a camper setup this weekend. But Vince, a solid ride, great start in his main event. Unfortunately, he crashed early, very small tip over, very minor thing, but lost a bunch of spots. Nonetheless, he rebounded 15th place, best run of the year for the number 719. Just behind him, 16th place, once again, Money Mitch. Mitchell Harrison on the Partzilla Rocket Blaster Power PRMX Kawasaki machine. Some camo on his gear and on his bike. His best run of the year. Couple close calls with some of the top guys during the main event. Very hard track to get out of the way of, especially with how close Lawrence, Roxon, Webb, and Tomac were throughout the main event. But Mitchell Harrison also inching forward. 16th place, best run of the year. Looking back now, more privateers starting to gain momentum. 17th place, Kevin Moran's 2 in a row after a few misses there after San Diego. Champion Tool Storage KTM guys, KMR, they had some nice looks. White bikes with some camo on there. And Jackson Freeman, his mechanic, I was talking to him, he's like, man, I finally convinced Kevin to run the black seat after running the orange all year. And black seat is 2 for 2 in the main events. Maybe this was the change Kevin needed. He went 1 for 5 on the orange seat, now 2 for 2 on the black seat. Maybe this was the change the doctor ordered. But 17th place for Kevin, back in the main event. 18th place, third start of the year as well for Tristan Lane on his McGinley Clinic's privateer support program. Yamaha, we had him on after Houston. A good night. 18th place, best run of the year for Tristan so far. And also in his third main event, third consecutive actually, Josh Cartwright. Mojo Electric, I believe, was the sponsor for him this weekend. A little bit of camo on his gear. Of course, he's doing those year or weekend sponsorship deals. So if you want to sponsor a team and you listen to the show, get in touch with Josh. We had him on last week after Seattle. He took the last transfer spot and then got 20th place in the main event. Josh starting to build and to continue growing after a couple years. 1 year of poor results and 1 year of taking time off. Now looking through news and notes from the 450 class, I feel bad for Zach Williams, man. He's another one of those McGinley Clinic guys. He's aboard a Honda number 874, the veteran out of Minnesota. He was so close to his first 450 main event, 2 turns away from it, in fact. But in that corner before the whoops, Cartwright gave him a little bit of elbow grease. A bit aggressive, but nothing over the line. It's the LCQ, a very tame LCQ pass for the last transfer spot. Williams had the whole shot, was looking good early, but that crowd of guys who are used to the main events, like Tristan Lane, like Josh Cartwright, started to overwhelm the number 874. Hopefully we get to see Zach in a main event this year. It would be awesome to see him in his first career 450 main. Of course, he spent a lot of his career on the 250. Justin Starling is back aboard his own effort. He's on a Yamaha this year, number 124 instead of 122. OnlyFans backing him. Great to see Justin back. He pitted with the Moto Whips Racing crew. Justin finally returning to action. He was going to run the AMA Arena Cross Series, ended up changing his mind, was going to go Kawasaki, then went back to the Yamaha after running a couple Arena Cross rounds on the Yamaha. And now Justin Starling back in action. A guy who I think once he gets up to speed, he'll be in the main event fight for sure. Freddie Noren, man, 1 for 6. We talk about him every week almost, and he was looking fast in qualifying. Fast Freddie was living up to his name because he was popping the quad at the end of that rhythm section right before the whoops. Malcolm Stewart, of course, was doing it a lot. Some of the other top 450 guys, but Freddie was one guy that kind of caught me by surprise doing it on his Gizmo racing machine. But unfortunately, a heat race crash and a bad start in the LCQ did him in. Shout out to the Heartbeat Hot Sauce Nano Extreme, powered by Tylube Yamaha guys. Team Solitaire, they pulled double duty. They raced in Guthrie, Oklahoma. Apparently, they arrived in Arlington around 3 a.m. on Saturday morning. They competed. Not the best runs from Robbie Wageman and Cole Thompson, but guess what? They were still out there trying to perform at their best. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. This has been the Unsung Heroes of the Arlington Supercross. As I mentioned, feel free to go check out my written version of the article, treystire.wordpress.com. You'll see plenty of graphic kits in both my 250 East and 450 articles. Thank you to Derek Kelley for the time. Once again, we're keeping those interview streaks up. Of course, we missed one, but since we had two at Houston, we're still 7 for 7 in the quest for 31 interviews in 31 weeks. Thank you so much for listening. Go find Stire Sound. Go find this show on all platforms. I'm at TJ Stire3 on Instagram if you want to follow me there. At the Stire Sound Official on Instagram as well. Thank you for the support. Keep supporting and showing love to these privateer underdog racers fighting for more. This has been part 7 of the 2026 Unsung Heroes. I am Trey Stire, your host, and I will see you for the Daytona edition next week. Thank you for listening.